Welcome everyone to another edition of Dollar Bin Bandits. I'm your bandit for the day, Outlaw Dan Johnson, and today I have the honor of talking with artist Dakota Alexander. If you spend any time on social media, you more than likely have seen Dakota's work. As a fan of Bronze Age comics, he's lovingly recreated many of our favorite superheroes um, with some truly stunning art pieces. Recently, Dakota started his own indie comic book, The Hunter, which is a love letter to the Bronze Age of comics. So without further ado, let's talk comics with Dakota Alexander. And for the folks who are watching at home or listening on your podcast, I'm going to be talking with artist Dakota Alexander, who is currently in Japan, Ohio.
Ohio.
That's one
It
of the
it
easy words.
is it is we're just after the Ohio. We're officially in Konnichiwa now.
Okay. Ohio is one of the easy ones to remember for me. So,
It definitely is. It definitely is. Um,
um,
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
it's an honor to have you here, my friend. For folks that are not familiar with Dakota's work, if you're a Bronze Age fan, if you love Marvel comics from the '80s or DC comics from the '80s, you are going to love his work because his style just it looks like you would have been in the bullpen in Marvel comics back in the 1980s. So that's like I said, I love your stuff, man. I know when I'm on Facebook, I first discovered you on Facebook because I kept seeing all these great illustrations show up, and I'm like, wow, this is really cool. And I'm like, this is really cool too. And it's like it's by the same guy. So that's really that's when I became a fan. And
Thank you
that's
so
when
much.
I told the guys we wanted to get you on just because of the stuff you're doing. Um, Again, you've got a very Bronze Age feel to your work, so I was going to ask you first off, um, what was it that got you into comics, and what were some of your inspirations?
Um, so I was born 1979,
Hmm.
and that was for those of you who are familiar with early 80s and Marvel and DC, that was an era where marketing to kids, went on to television. I mean, you had your there's always been like the Filmation and the Grant Trey Lawrence stuff that was going on like the 60s, and that might have like spilled over into the 70s and reruns and whatnot. But we had Marvel got into animation, and then Hanna-Barbera got into to DC. So we had Superpowers, Challenge of the Super Friends, and then there was the 1981 Spider-Man. That by 1984 or so, you had Spider-Man: His Amazing Friends as well as the Incredible Hulk.
Hmm.
And so and then of course, reruns of the Incredible Hulk and occasionally reruns of the 1977 Nicholas Hammond Spider-Man.
Awesome.
And there was just this available media for someone who was too young to read comic books to be wowed by superheroes. And that really was what it was. It was that right off the bat, like superheroes were exciting and interesting. And so when I started actually reading the comic books and getting into the lore itself, it was a very, very smooth transition. And I managed to kind of inherit a bunch from a neighbor who was moving actually pretty soon, and he gave me a bunch of his comic books, and so I started out with this kind of um, this sort of pass along treasure chest of availability. One of the books itself was an official handbook of the Marvel Universe.
Okay.
So, and then very shortly after that was like Who's Who.
Hmm.
So I immediately started enjoying comic books, but also getting directly into the lore, and the very specifics of that. And just really that was it from probably the age of about 6, 7, 8. By 8, I was predominantly into comic books more than anything else that I was interested in. And I started drawing around that time too. So I was very into artists and writers, and I was the kind of person who looked at the credits for things a lot. So I recognized a lot of those names. And that was it. I mean, in a nutshell, like that's how I started. I started through the media first.
Okay. Well, I was gonna say I was born in the '70s, so I know what you're talking about. There being just this plethora of great material out there. I mean, you had superheroes in prime time, you had superheroes on Saturday mornings, and
Yeah.
I was lucky because we had two really great UHF stations in my hometown, and they would just run like the old Filmation Superman, Aquaman cartoons. They would run
Yeah.
Batman, they ran Ultraman, they ran
Yeah.
oh gosh, just so much really amazing stuff, and it's just I always tell kids nowadays, you're lucky because with streaming and with physical media, there's if there's any show you want to watch, you can watch it anytime you want to.
Right.
But real adventure was when you had to be up at like 8 o'clock in the morning on Saturday morning to catch Super Friends, or you had to. Well, at one time they were running Nicholas Hammond films on our local
Right.
CBS affiliate, but they ran them at like 3 o'clock in the morning on Saturday mornings. So I would get up at 3 o'clock on Saturday mornings every Saturday just to watch these things, which I'd already seen like a dozen times, but I still
True.
watched them because I loved them because it was Spider Man plus it's live action Spider Man.
Yeah, it was live action Spider-Man. And I think um have you gotten a chance to ever watch the Toei Spider-Man
Yes.
stuff?
Oh gosh, yes, that is. I
It's so wild.
well, No Way Home. I kept waiting for the Japanese Spider Man to show up in that film, and I'm like, when is he going to? When are you going to have the coolest Spider Man of them all? Because really,
Oh.
well, the
Um,
the,
the,
the emissary to hell, as I
oh
like,
man.
yeah.
The Disney Plus was doing their 616 documentary series, and they went to did the documentary on the making of that. And and like what they did for the action. And I think that was the thing that like as cool as it was to see, Spider-Man climbing up the side of a building, like the action and action in general, like choreographed fighting and stuff like that in general, and by the 1970s was very was just not as involved.
Right.
It didn't have a level of choreography. It didn't have a level. It wasn't very dynamic. And that was unfortunate because I've always felt that Spider-Man could have such a plethora of opportunity for fighting. Man, but those Japanese fights were
Yes.
so good. And they had the guy like doing backflips, and he would do backflips and like hang on a car, and the stunt
Hmm.
work was so good. And then it turns into the Zord, and you're like, oh,
Yeah.
well, that's fair. You know,
Well,
uh, yeah,
I gotta admit, when I was about 14 or 15, I was starting to get into Japanese media. I was starting to get into like anime, and I was starting to get into giant robots. And I'm like, I gotta admit, at that point, I was kind of like, Spider-Man with a giant robot. That's not a bad idea. That's got possibilities. But
Did
that's
you
just me,
know?
of course.
Did you know that toy line was one of the first giant robot toy lines that they actually were getting produced? And I want to say it might not have been Bandai at the time, but it was one of the first TV to toy line ventures in Japanese giant robot toy making
Yeah.
genre or whatever. So interestingly enough, how Spider-Man was so instrumental in like a paradigm shift, in media and merchandise marketing. It's so good. But at the same time, while you were saying that too, it was reminding me of 3 o'clock in the morning for the Nicholas Hammond thing. We did have VHS, and I did watch almost all of my Nicholas Hammond stuff on VHS because I just, the one where he goes to China, and then of course they would have episodes and stuff. But man, I moved in with my dad. It was just me and my dad when I was 8 years old, and we had cable. Where I grew up as a kid was quite rural, so we just had the 3, 4 channels or whatever.
Hmm.
But you had local cable televisions when you got closer to San Francisco. I'm from South San Francisco, and so all the movies that television would play, because unless you were a major affiliate, you just had no other programming. So everything was in syndication.
Hmm.
Everything was was movies, and whatever movies they could get their hands on. So you watched all these randomly obscure films that you're never going to see the light of day ever again.
Right.
But of that was Doctor Strange, those two Captain America movies with Reb
Mm-hmm.
Brown, and you were excited because it was a comic book on screen moving.
Mm-hmm.
And even then, though, I will admit, even then, I'm like, wow, this is so not great, but it is the only thing that I have.
Yeah.
So, so when people are like, oh, I've got superhero fatigue, I'm like, no, that's not it. No, I definitely don't have that. I have bad movie superhero fatigue.
Yeah.
But if you give me a good superhero movie, I'm in. I'm absolutely in 1,000%.
Well, I am too. And the thing about it is, I mean, you don't really have. Well, I remember talking with John Romita for Back Issue one time, and he was talking about Stan Lee
Junior or senior?
Senior.
Cool.
Yeah, John was awesome. John was one of those guys that for a while there until he retired, I could call him up and ask for like an interview at any time. He was so cool and just very willing to talk, very willing to talk about the industry and such. But I mean, I remember he
Cool.
had this great story about Stan Lee calling one time, and it was during the time they were getting ready to produce the Nicholas Hammond Spider-Man series.
Right.
And Stan wanted to get John's advice. He was asking about what do you think about them changing the costume to black, so it'd be red and black.
Oh,
And John was talking about, well, when Steve Ditko originally drew it, the intention was to make it a red on black costume,
sure.
and they had the blue highlights for like the shadows, and it eventually just came to a point where they started doing blue. And John asked, well, why do they want to do this? And Stan said, well, because the special effects screen they've got, they can't shoot it with the blue costume. They got to shoot it with a black costume because the blue blends in with it.
Right.
Blue screen. And John said, well, Electric Company, when they were doing it, they were able to do it fine. It turned out to be the producers wanted to go with a blue screen because it was $150 cheaper than a green
Mm,
screen.
right.
But it was funny because John was
Right.
talking about all the stuff that he came up with, stuff he mentioned like what Ditko came up with and Jack
Right.
Kirby, all these master storytellers. It was talking
Right.
about it took another 40 years for for technology to catch up with their imagination.
Right.
But
And
what
that,
they were put on
yeah.
the page, it took 40 years for Hollywood to be able to put on the screen and do it properly. But again, with Nicholas Hammond climbing up the wall, you see the wires, Reb Brown, the costume, Captain America costume, isn't that great? But then
Lucas
again, also
Field.
we've got a live action Hulk. We don't have a CGI Hulk. We actually have a live action Hulk, which is something I pity kids nowadays not having. I'm like, you guys need a live action Hulk.
Oh, I'm on both sides of that fence. I'm on both sides of the fence. Just because um they have to depower him a lot. And what you get now is you get, a Hulk able to do Hulk level types of things. But I get what you're saying. I mean, I think the argument of having physical effects, right? Like when they had the most, not the most recent Predator movie, but the one with the Native Americans, the
Oh,
Prey.
pray, yeah.
And Prey had a physical Predator costume, and it looks great,
Hmm.
and it moves well, and there's so much artistry involved in making these types of costumes, puppeteer work, all that kind of stuff. So I mean, I know that in so many cases, Hollywood's like, look, we can just get it done in post.
Yeah,
We want principal photography done. We want to like stop having to, use this space to shoot and all these people, and that's always going to be Hollywood's bottom line is like, look, if we just everything's CG, we save all this other money doing things. But it's like you got to balance it out because it always looks better. Always. It always has that. I just think that in the case of the Hulk, it's a tricky one But I do know that in the Fantastic Four movie, the recent one, that most of the Thing stuff was actually a physical costume, and
Mhm.
they just mostly just did the effects on the face. So it's still there. You still got people pushing for it, and I'm glad to see that.
Yeah. Well, at the end of the day, you really can't beat a guy in a rubber costume. I mean, that's just always going to be for me. That's going to be the go-to effect. But again, I'm one of those weirdos who likes that kind of stuff. So
Oh, it's I absolutely get where you're coming from. I absolutely get where you're coming from. And I'm very much on the defense in the sense of like, what are you trying to do with it? Or the meme like, well, why not both? You know what I mean? Because Jurassic Park had these incredible CG, but they did have the physical too, and the mixture of those things
mhm.
matter, right? So you know what I say? Here's what I say. I say use your CG for the shots that need the CG, and then make sure that you're constantly editing till you have the physical so that you got both of those things. And I just think you're going to have a more dynamic story that way. You know, it takes a little bit more work, it takes a little bit more editing, but you're just going to get a better movie out of it. You know,
The other thing is too. I think sometimes when you get into the practical effects, you really start seeing the love that gets put into these things. Have you ever seen the Roger Corman Fantastic Four movie?
yes, yes, I have. It's a good suit. It's a good suit. His mouth is pretty much just doing this and this when it talks, but it's a good suit. I'm not never a fan of the jeweler though. I thought that was an unnecessary subplot, but overall, I it's a very good, charming film.
I'd always heard they want to do Mole Man, but apparently Marvel, apparently there's some, even if you got the rights to Fantastic Four, you still got to pay the rights for each individual character. And they came back and said, well, we can do a brand new character, so we don't have to pay the Mole Man. It's a green screen for 150 bucks cheaper, for a blue screen for 150 bucks cheaper thing, I guess.
Right, right.
Well, I was gonna say, have you ever seen the series Babylon 5, the TV
Yeah,
series?
yeah.
Well, the guys who did the Thing suit, Optic Nerve, were the same ones who did the makeup effects for B5. And what I've always heard is that basically they lowballed the price. They were like they just wanted to work on the Fantastic Four movie and make the Thing, and it was practically for nothing. They were just like, we're just doing it for the love of this thing because we want to see the thing done right. And whatever you say about the film, it's wonky at times, but that Thing costume for 1994 is still pretty impressive.
It is. It is. Optic Nerve and I want to say KMB was doing some stuff on it too. Uh, I remember a lot about. Did you ever read a magazine called Cinefantastique?
Oh, I love that one. Yeah, that was one of my favorites growing up.
That's how I know about like KMB Optic Nerve because they were very effects heavy in a lot of their articles too. That was such a great magazine, man. Did
Yes.
I have a subscription to that at one point? It was okay. That's another thing too. Where are my damn magazines? Where's my freaking Starlog? Where's my comic scene? Like Fangoria, though I was never a huge fan of Fangoria, you just are glad that it's there, or
Mhm.
Gore Zone, or all that stuff. I mean, God, I just had so many of these like great media, so much stuff. And I learned so much about what was going on in the industry, movies that never saw the light of day,
Mhm.
like the Fantastic Four, or like well, eventually Suburban Commando came out, but like movies that were like shelved for a long time,
Right.
and stuff like that. Same thing with Comic Scene Magazine. Comic Scene Magazine, gave me the info about, the Mike Mignola or Tim Bradstreet before Bradstreet joined up with the Punisher back in the 90s. Ah, God, it was a time when you had a lot of available resource for it. And I was really, really I feel very, very blessed for the time that I grew up. And I think you probably feel the same way too,
Oh yeah.
even though it was earlier than me. But I think, from the 70s to the 90s was a very, very involved period of time where, comic books was not getting its due, but it was pushing as much out as it possibly could. And so if you loved it and you found stuff that supported it, it was that much more something that you can cherish, you
Right.
know? And it's true. It's true that there's way more options available to people than ever before. And so, maybe the appreciation, there's a depreciation of the medium at this point because of that. But I don't know. I mean, I can't speak for kids and whatnot. So
Well, for myself, I just always thought the '80s were a magical time for comics because you've still got guys like Jack Kirby and Steve Ditko and Will Eisner making books, but you've got all this brand new talent that's coming into the industry at the same time too. I did the last article I did for Back Issue. I was talking about the unexpected DC's horror comic. And I mentioned one issue where you had a story that was written by, or it was written by Lynn Wein, and the artist was Phil Norris, who was the creator of Aquaman back in the 1940s.
right.
And in that same issue, you've got a story that's done by Steve Bissette, who just before he went on to Swamp Thing.
Oh,
And it's just this wonderful thing of you've got somebody from the 1940s, from the Golden Age, in the same comic book with a rising star like Bissette. And you'd get these guys like, you get Bernie Wrightson in an issue where you might have Al Williamson doing a story. Or you may
right,
have, or just Joe Orlando just running the entire show and just the legacy he had with DC Comics and everything. It was just that wonderful time where well, you mentioned the who's.
right,
I love those issues because you can look on those things and you can see um, an illustration by Dave Stevens, and on the next
right,
page you've got an illustration by Kirby, or you've got a
right,
Ditko with someone like
right.
just
And
wonderful
the and the
talent
and
that's
the
coming together.
occasional
It's
guy who
amazing.
comes over from Marvel too, like there's like occasionally like a Ron Friends, and you're like, oh,
Yeah.
okay. And then that was a period too when Perez developed the new Perez style, because I never knew this for the longest time was how long he was at Marvel.
Mhm.
And if you look at the the deluxe editions of the Marvel handbooks, so many of those panels that they're using, especially if it's Avengers related or any Avengers related character, so many of those panels are George Perez art, or when he was doing work on the Fantastic Four, because they use a lot of covers and stuff, and a lot of them were George Perez covers, like for the Red Ghost and things. But if you know him from his DC work when he was doing Titans and he was doing all those covers for Who's Who, his style was so distinguished and distinctive that you just didn't think that it was the same person.
Yeah.
And it's just such an incredible shift. Like the guy basically reinvented himself when he moved over to DC. Some would argue possibly for the better, but I think that's just taste, because there's some people who prefer his work when he was at Marvel too. But man, I loved his stuff. Was so detailed. Just and he loved. I read that he was like he's the guy who did the Jack of Hearts costume, right?
Mhm.
The
Yeah.
infamous Jack of Hearts costume that other artists like outright refused to draw because of how detailed it was. But
Yeah.
Perez is the guy's like, oh, I love doing all those little tiny, like all those extra little
Hmm.
details and
Hmm.
lines and stuff.
Yeah.
To the point where you're like, okay, you're kind of Spectrum, bro. Like that's a level, but God, it's just so relaxing. So relaxing drawing every single window and every little tiny building in the background here, you know? But you
Well,
get you what an output.
I love his Crisis on Infinite Earths
Right.
cover for number 7.
Good Lord.
It's iconic because you got the whole Superman holding Supergirl, but in the background you got all these characters, and you look at these characters. There's no fudging anywhere. I mean, even there's details on characters that you would have to take a magnifying glass to see.
Right.
So yeah, again, and I do know what you're talking about because I know I look at some of the stuff he did like on Fantastic Four in the late '70s. It doesn't look anything like his Teen Titans stuff. But
Nothing.
then again, I think it's always good for artists to be willing to make changes to their style, to evolve, and we grow as individuals and people, so why shouldn't our art do the same?
Uh, Why shouldn't art do the same? I mean, I don't think there's any argument against that. I will say though that it it's so wishy-washy, but I was going to say like it kind of depends. What I notice in some cases is that this happens, I think, with filmmakers too, is that they see this like new avenue and they're like, you know what, I think I want to just do this now.
Hmm.
And there's not always a case when I think it's a question of evolution as much as in some cases I think they're looking at like it's a question of efficiency. So I'll give you the easiest example was like everyone except for me initially hated when Byrne did his own inking.
Hmm.
So many people talked about it. And I actually prefer like when it's the earlier Fantastic Four work, I think it's clean. I think it's like it's got really, really great line value. But later on, he just went for a marker to everything,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Versus like when it was very clear he was using a brush. Now everything he does, if he inks his own work, is clearly that. Now, what does that mean? I think in his case, I think it's a level of efficiency, whereas there's less work that I have to do. But what does that leave his work?
right.
Frank Miller's another really good example where I think, and I'm not talking about right now, but I'm talking about when he was leaving Sin City and going and doing that sequel to The Dark Knight, where he moved towards, I think he was moving towards, it's like it's less work versus the very first Sin City issues, or not the very first, but more like the latter half of the first book, which is what they call the hard goodbye now, when it was all completely black and white, like there was no line work. There's just an amazing level of precision to some of his panel work. And it feels like it's falling off. Now, is it falling off or is he looking like, you know what? It's a lot of work. I want to make something that's a little bit more efficient for me. And so I have to look at, it's not simply a question of in Perez's case, which I think is a very, very good example of growth
Hmm.
and also you know, reinventing yourself, which is something that artists should be allowed to do and should be encouraged to do. But in other cases, you know, I see people taking shortcuts. Liefeld's first work on Hawk and Dove, it's not bad. It's pretty good. It's kind of dynamic, actually. And when he gets to X-Force, when the guy's at the top of his game, he is cutting corners. He is taking shortcuts. And it's really, really true. Jim Lee used to be a little bit more dynamic, in my opinion. He's a little bit more static now, but the guy hasn't missed a step in terms of the quality of the work that he's doing. So you know what I mean? Like I'm one of those people who's like, all right, well, let's look at the whole picture here and let's examine it. Um, in my particular case, though, I think where I've moved into was not what I was doing, 5, 6 years ago or something like that. So, you know,
Well, I
yeah,
think, well, I think one thing we might make a distinction about is there's a difference between cutting corners.
true.
Like, I know with Byrne, when he was starting to do the magic marker on Fantastic Four, he was also doing that on Alpha Flight. And it's like,
Right.
and nowadays I hear about artists that can't turn out an issue on time. And you got back in the day, you had Byrne able to do 2 books every month, which is it's not Kirby level, but it's pretty damn close.
Oh no, I think Burns an incredibly efficient storyteller too.
Oh, no,
One
no,
one of
no.
the things I love about, his
Oh, no.
his panel work, it's so efficient at getting things taken care of,
Oh, no,
But
I
big
meant
Burn
about.
fan.
Oh, no, I meant about Jack. I meant about Jack turning out pages. Producing
Oh,
pages.
I'm sorry. I thought you were talking about like, Burn working on 2 books and stuff.
Oh, no, 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 no. It's just Kirby. I mean, back in the '60s, you had Kirby turning out 12 pagers for almost every book. If it was, you may have Ditko on Spider Man, Doctor Strange, Don Heck on some stuff, but
Right.
then you had Kirby turning out whole books, which sometimes was a good thing. I mean, there's some fantastic Four work and Thor work that's fantastic, and there are other issues like I always point to Avengers #2, that splash page where it's the Hulk, Iron Man, and Thor, and it's probably the most, I hate to say it, but it's one of the most ugly Jack Kirby pages I've ever seen in my life, because it's basically you just got the three characters there and they're just posed, and it's just, well, I remember reading, eventually it got to a point where Stan was just like, what books do you want to do so you keep up your quality? And he was like, I want to do Fantastic
Right,
Four,
right,
Thor, and Captain America. And that's when they started passing off the books to other artists. But eventually you can get burned out. And I
right,
think that's where we get to the idea of doing cutting the corners. But then again, like Perez, I think Perez, that was an actual evolution because he was wanting to change up his style.
right.
And well, again, you mentioned the fact that his work at DC is so much different than stuff in Marvel. And it could have been
Mm,
because of that change of pace. It could have been
true.
going from one company to another. It can be that big of a difference. I
Also,
remember,
I think he was influenced by the house style too.
mhm,
Marvel was very, they had their marching orders
yeah,
about, you know, how things were supposed to look. And the you know, Joe Sinnott, obviously, when Joe Sinnott inks your work, you know, your work will resemble Joe Sinnott type kind of work, which is a good thing, but also at the same time is a very distinction. It's a big distinction on the final product.
and well, because I remember, I love John Byrne's work on Fantastic Four. His run on Fantastic Four was one of the ones that got me into that comic book and made me a
Same.
fan. Although I knew Kirby's work, but that was the run that made me a fan forever and a day. But even when he went over to DC to do Man of Steel, that first issue of that he did, it was like you could tell he's getting a little more vitality there. He's getting a little more energy. It's like it's exciting, it's new, it's something different. And I think the distinction becomes: are you cutting corners or are you challenging yourself?
True.
Are you doing the same old, or are you doing something that's different, that's reviving you? And I think that's where it comes down to some artists. And sometimes, again, I look at someone like Kurt Swan. Loved his work. He's forever and a day my Superman artist. He's always going to be that. But he also did Superman for 30 plus years, and his style always remained constant, always remained the same, which was good. But I think a lot of artists, sometimes it's a good idea to move on from a book. Sometimes you need to, again, you just need fresh challenges. You need fresh fields to toll. So,
When you bring up him Burn on Superman too. So when he left, I think Shooter was still at Marvel at the time
yeah,
when
he
Byrne
was.
left for DC, right?
Hmm.
There's you've heard about the you know the kind of what am I trying to say? It's the not like the executive order, but the house order that pages had to have like a certain, at least a certain number of panels, and
Hmm.
you had to be able to fit this much story into it. And to an extent, I kind of agree with that because, you know, I look and I'm like 6, 7 panels, man, there's a whole lot going on here, you know. When Byrne goes over to DC and the Man of Steel, which I love, and I do love Byrne's Superman, despite the fact that a lot of people take issue with it and about how it changed the tone of the character. Because Byrne's Superman is an action book.
Yeah.
It's a book that is designed for action panels. And it's a lot of bigger panels. And it's mostly a lot more action. And in a story, in an issue of Superman, there might actually be less story because the action is taking up so much of the story. But it's good action. It's interesting action, and there's choreography to how things are being done. And and I look at those, that book in some respects actually is a huge influence on a lot of the way that I've been thinking and designing my own page layouts and panel work because he just has that energy, you know, when people are fighting at 80s Burn is really just great at just moving things across the page, you know, in various angles and stuff like that. And 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 now because I just read Hidden Years like last night and I'm
Mhm.
like, oh, there's something, it's something missing. And I don't know what it is, but I mean, like he's moving into he's done so much storytelling since then. He did 2112, he went on to Next Men. Even before that, he was doing OMAC when he was kind of at the same time doing Namor. And then he went back and he did that Spider-Man series when Spider-Man had like a blue spider on his back, and I
Year
wasn't
one,
very
yeah,
interested in it,
yeah.
you know. So I think he's revamped his ideas for how he wants to tell stories, you know. Whether or not that's as compelling as it was before is a different story. But what you're saying about challenging, I can understand, at least at that time,
Yeah.
because he's able to put that stuff out. To him, I don't think it's as much an effort issue. He has the chops, he has the speed, and so now he has the fervor, the fire's back in it. So he's making bigger panels and more detail and stuff.
Well, that's kind of a good segue. We're talking about different artists and such. I did want to ask about who were some of your influences. I mean, you mentioned Perez, you mentioned Friends, John Byrne. I can definitely see those guys in your work, but I was going to ask who were some of the artists that inspired you.
When I got, let's see, it's probably around the pandemic is when I started moving back into doing comic kind of work. Before the pandemic, I got onto Photoshop in like 2015 and did some stuff. I was very influenced by like Michael Cho at the time when Michael Cho was really unknown, but I saw some of his work and I was like, this is so cool.
Yeah,
This is the coolest stuff ever. Like it's that whole beautiful mid-century, print style. It's only a couple of colors. It's almost very much like commercial artwork, but it has its comic roots there, and I loved it so much. And Photoshop allowed me to kind of go in that direction. But then I was doing a bunch of like Japanese stuff, and around the pandemic, I started getting commission work, and so I was still doing some Michael Cho stuff, but then I started getting into trying to do more classic stuff. And at that time, it was John Romita Sr., more predominantly Gil Kane, inked by John Romita Sr.
mhm,
That period of Spider-Man I look at as like the peak, the
yeah,
absolute peak. And so a great deal of my inking for a while was John Romita Sr. inking. So the big strokes,
yeah.
those big, beautiful black strokes. And I've got the artisan edition of Gil Kane when he was doing Spider-Man. And so it's just like the scanned pages on this beautiful paper. And you know, there's the John Romita pages and there's the Frank Giacoa pages, which are very, very different. But, God, just love those lines.
Oh, yeah,
And after that, it's John Buscema. John Buscema, very much like How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way.
hmm, yeah,
You can look at John Buscema panels with no text and know exactly what's going on.
yes.
A
That's
1000%. And every single panel is so incredibly dynamic.
that is the book I always tell artists when they want to start out. I always say, get you a copy of that book, read it, memorize it, love it, use it.
I mean, it could be more. I guess that's my only like. I wish that there was a volume two where it's just like now these are your basics. Now let's show you what it looks like when we take them into a more comprehensive approach. Because it starts you there, but like you need an intermediate level for it because I think, okay, now how do I really get, from here to here on the page? And there's a lot to that I learned in what how long is it? It's about less than a year and a half, about a year and a couple of months. I've been doing interiors for now, and I never really wanted to ever do them before. Um, Jim Lee, during his X-Men run, is an incredible influence, as is Alan Davis. Um, they're also incredible, just incredible panel work. Davis has a really, really wonderfully unique style in his own right that Brian Hitch was trying to follow suit, and then Brian Hitch managed to go in his own level. I think there's a guy named Ivan Reese now who's also very much Brian Hitch, Davis oriented. But Davis has this amazing ability to do action in a really, really great way. Like he understands how to draw a body from every single angle that you could possibly imagine and make it look so smooth,
Yeah.
so incredibly smooth. Um, so that, and then what I've gotten back into most recently, so Ramita, Kane, Byrne, not as much Neil Adams, but you love Neil Adams just because Neil Adams can do what he does. Nobody does perspective like Neil Adams does. Nobody does the
Exactly. Exactly.
difficult things like Neil Adams does. Um, and then very recently, same thing with Jose Luis Garcia Lopez.
Mhm.
Um, it's the same thing. It's like, no pose is simple.
Right.
Everything is like, contorted and and tensed at points and
He's got that
just yeah.
he's got that style where even when they're just standing still, it looks like they could spring into action at any moment.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, because I worked a lot in emulation when I would do like a lot of covers. Mike Zeck too, actually. I'd like to bring in Mike Zeck because Mike Zeck, when Mike Zeck has time to do work, Mike Zeck excels. When Mike
Yeah.
Zeck is rushed, then it's unfortunate
Right.
because just again, like on a Perez level of detail that the guy puts into it. Um, but the effortlessness that some of these guys do the work that they do. And me trying to like, be like, God damn, how does he make that shoulder arm thing work? Because you break it down and you're like, this doesn't make any damn sense at all. When you really like examine it, like how you realize that superheroes really have tiny heads.
Yeah.
But because you're so into what you're looking at, you never really focus on those things.
Right.
But when you actually, grit it out and make the proportions, you're like, my God, his hands are huge. My God, his head is small. Things like that, you know. So that if I was to take anyone from new, it would be Chris Samney and Michael Cho. Maybe and Rob Dillator. Rob Dillator working on Conan because that guy is John Buscema is alive and well in Rob Dillator.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's good
My
stuff.
my oh, it's so wonderful. And he doesn't do nearly enough work. Because I think it takes a long time for these guys to do the work that they do.
Yeah.
You know? I think Samney might be one of the only guys who can do things as fast as a lot of the old pros could do it. But nowadays, I don't think people have the speed for it. Oh, Steve Rude. I'm sorry. Should I just like give you a list and we can just like put it in a chat or something?
No,
So
that's
many
cool,
wonderful
man.
artists.
Well, no, no, you're hitting on all the greats. I always tell the story that Steve Rude was the guy that made me become a writer instead of an
Oh,
artist
okay.
because I wanted to be an artist when I first started out wanting to make comic books. Then I saw Nexus, and I'm like, I could bust my ass for the next 50 years. I don't think I'm ever going to catch up to this guy. And I'm like, but if I work hard enough, maybe I can write a story worthy of Steve Rude drawing.
Ah.
So that's where I got more into the writing part of it myself because I was like, I'm never going to be able to catch up with someone like Rude, but maybe I can be the guy that does the story that inspires him to turn out some really damn good artwork.
I have
So
a question for you.
sure,
What was the circumstance that allowed you to discover Nexus?
I was very lucky that we actually had a comic book shop
Uh,
in my hometown, Acme Comics, which at the time it's weird now. so many comic book shops are closing all over the country
Yeah.
in the United States. My hometown of Greensboro actually has four comic book shops, and
Awesome.
it is well. The funny thing is about it is that they're always bitching and griping at each other. So it's kind of fun going on their pages, just watching. Well, so and so at this shop did this, and so at that shop did that, and it's like I'm just sitting here with the popcorn, going, okay, good, but that's.
Just don't close down, dude. You know. Okay.
But I was lucky because, well, I was lucky also because I had a mother that didn't discourage me from reading comic books.
Right. Same. Yeah.
And for my 15th birthday, my only wish was to go down to Acme Comics. The thing is, Acme Comics at the time was located in a part of town in Greensboro that had not gone through urban renewal yet, and it was sketchy, is the best way to put it.
Ah,
It was one of those places you don't want to go down to it in nighttime because you didn't. It was just wasn't safe. But she allowed me to go down there when I was 15, and I just went nuts and just picked up. I'd saved up birthday money, Christmas money, allowance, and just went nuts and just started buying all the comics I could find. And I discovered Nexus, and I'm like, I've got to come back to the shop because I need to see this book again. It was issue number 10.
okay.
And then I got lucky because we had like a little comic show at a local mall, and there was a guy there that sold like the first few issues. I was able to get those, and I was just able to build up a nice collection over time. But
And that was
I
back when he had kind of that almost Paul Smith kind of style.
yeah,
Yeah. It was much more kind of sleek as opposed to, that wonderful Hanna-Barbera, Doug Wildley kind of style that he has now.
but the cool thing was I remember reading the issues, and what I loved about it was I loved the stories that him and Mike
Yeah.
Barron came up with. And I
Yeah.
got the graphic novel, and I'm just like, this is just so much better than anything DC and Marvel's doing. It's just so much layered, so much more complex, the characters. And then also I discovered the Easter eggs because I'm like, wait a minute, there's a scene there with Magnus Robot Hunter or Robot
Right.
Fighter.
Right.
And is that Captain Kirk and Mr. Spock in line? And I'm like, just looking for little stuff like
Ah!
that. So,
Oh man, God, Rude's so good, dude. Rude is so
do
um
you ever watch his live chats on Saturday afternoons? Well, I guess as we
I
country
get the
guys, yeah,
FB reels from time to time, just like, he seems nice, a little grumpy, but it's
yeah,
understandable, you know. Um so I also my comic shop is still around.
mhm,
My comic shop is actually the comic shop from the Lost Boys. That's where I'm from, Santa Cruz, California.
nice,
And I was got a chance to actually go back there and show the owner my comic over Christmas, which was something that was like, I grew up, you guys are the reason why I'm loving comics to this day here, full circle. And he said, he's like, come back. Um if you get like your issue 2 out, come back in October this year, because this year is their 50th anniversary.
mhm,
50th anniversary. So he's like, we'll set you up a table and everything. But
nice,
Nexus, Nexus was one of those comics that you heard about because there was always like Nexus, like in I don't know exactly. It was like Grendel and
yeah,
Nexus, the when they were on Comico or First or things like that. They were these characters that existed outside of like the big two.
right,
And when Nexus went over to Dark Horse for it was like the Wages of Sin, I read an article in Comic Scene and I saw the art and I was like, this is so freaking cool.
yeah,
And I would have been about 12 or 13 at the time. So I went and I picked that one up, and then, before that it was like, it was Alien Justice, and the ones that came after that, it was God Con, and then I went and picked up some old back issues at like some conventions and stuff like that. But yeah, his work, um, his Nexus work, it's so incredible,
yeah,
so good, and he still does like, phenomenal work. And it's a shame that, his work requires time. And
Yeah.
everyone's just like, dude, Marvel, like just let the guy have a couple of miniseries,
Hmm.
you know? And but it's,
Remember the Spider-Man miniseries you did? That was really fantastic. And of course,
Lifeline.
the World's Finest, Batman. That's like one of the best Batman Superman stories right there, and it's one of the best illustrated for sure.
Yeah. It's good. It's a little goofy at times, a little bit, little too goofy at times, but and I'm not a huge fan of Steve Olaf's coloring, but it's very, very, very good. But Lifeline, oh man, I love Lifeline. I brought that with me to Japan. Like I only have like so many comics
Mhm.
with me in Japan, but I've got, like thousand, well, maybe like a thousand or a couple thousand or something like that back home. So every time I go home, it's just like, what can I bring? But Lifeline was one of the first ones because it's just it's it's got it's got everything that we weren't seeing for however many years, in the 2000s and whatnot. And I guess
Definitely.
that's part of it, like why I'm doing the things that I'm doing, because I don't have the access to it, so I'm just doing it myself, I guess.
Well, I was going to ask how did you get into comics? How did you break into the business?
I did not break in. People found me actually. So, well, no, okay, okay. I guess what I did was when I got into Photoshop, I would just, I'd make art and I'd post art. And most of my friend was saying, go to the subreddits. And so I would post art in the subreddits. And I did pretty well in the subreddits. And then I also at around the same time started getting into Facebook groups.
Hmm.
I'd never got onto Facebook groups before. Didn't really know about them very much. And they were, I think a lot of them really started just before the pandemic,
Right.
from what I'm understanding, and a bunch of them started during the pandemic, I imagine. But so the first group I ever got into was this group, Marvel Comics fans, 1961 to 1986,
I'm a
run
member of
by
that
this
one.
guy,
Yeah.
run by the very, very lovable, very nice guy, Bill Cairns,
Hmm.
um, who is a wonderful, solid dude, and ran a a tight ship that had some really, really dedicated people. But the trick was that, you had to keep it into that era. So when I did fan art, it had to be in that era.
Right.
And so if I was going to get any kind of response, and it was a group of people who were very, very avid when they saw new artwork that resembled that era, they got very excited.
Hmm.
So so that was what I started doing. And then there was a couple other groups. So I started just kind of, putting my art out there. I'd make art, put it out, make art, put it out. And I got approached for a commission here and a commission there occasionally. And then my first, I guess, big break was this guy named Mike Finn who did this was it Kickstarter? It was Indiegogo. I think it was Indiegogo, but called the Liberty Brigade.
Hmm.
That was all made up of all made up of public domain characters plus characters that he created. Mark Wade actually helped did a bunch of the editing. And he got all these, artists. He got Ron Friends was on there. And I was like, oh my God,
I
look at all
remember
these
that one.
people.
Yeah.
He's like, you know, give me 4 pinups. I was like, okay. And I was like, it'll be this much. He's like, done.
Awesome.
And I was like, wait, what? And so I did the first one, and he's like, cool, 3 more. Here's all the money. And I never had that level of recognition for it. You had to, like, starting out, you first of all, you have a very, very low sense of self-worth.
Right.
At least I did. People who have a very high sense of self-worth when they start out, I'm impressed by. I'm like, that's amazing. I admire your confidence
Yeah.
because there's no reason why you should think that. It's like, what do you have to offer? That was my thinking at the time. So he did that, and then I was putting out more stuff, and there was a point during the pandemic when I was like, you know what? I'm gonna do a concept piece. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do Spider-Man versus the Green Goblin, but I'm going to do a different piece with essentially the same background, but it's going to be drawn differently to resemble the different eras. So it was 70s John Romita, Spidey versus Green Goblin, and then it was 80s Black Suit versus the Hobgoblin, and that one was very much Ron Friends inspired.
Oh yeah.
And then it was 90s Scarlet Spider versus the Demogoblin. That one was a bit of a stretch. That was Mark Bagley. And then I did Spider Girl and Miles Morales and Spider Gwen. And then I
Nice.
post them all up on my Etsy. And this guy Austin Huff contacted me. He's like, I want to buy all of these. What's a bulk rate? And so we worked out a bulk rate. And then he's like, okay, I'm making a comic book and I want you to be involved. And I was like, okay, I don't do interior art. He's like, all right, that's fine. I'm getting other people for that. But he wanted me to do these character sheets.
Yeah.
And he's like, I want to do them like the Marvel Universe ones. And I was like, that's cool. But imagine, if you will, what if we did them like the DC Who's Who's?
Hmm.
Where you have your character and you have all that great stuff going on, and it
Right.
looks, old and all that kind of stuff. And that was definitely my big break because what that did was that put me into kind of rubbing elbows with some people. One of which was Chuck Patton actually.
Hmm.
And Chuck and I, chat a little bit more, and I'm having Chuck do the a variant cover for issue number 2 of The Hunter.
Nice.
Very, very excited about that because I'm gonna get me some Chuck Patton art. I'm gonna put that up on the wall. Chuck Patton's a guy who I also grew up with.
Hmm.
He drew one of my all-time favorite single issues of Daredevil, which is at Daredevil 245 when the Black Panther gets involved and Daredevil and Black Panther fight. Really, really wonderful stuff. And so at that point, I had gotten to know people and people kind of knew my name a little bit.
Hmm.
But it was still honestly like I don't know if I still had any kind of a break. But people, because I kept putting more and more stuff out on Facebook, and I had really started moving into creating the vintage style where like you saw more like dot coloring, and I was making it look like it was faded and vintage like crease cracks and stuff. Before I had the software, I had to make all that stuff myself. That got people's attention. I mean, it got people's attention like a lot. And people were coming to me for variant covers or pinups and stuff. And then and I guess that's probably about as high as it got, but I didn't really have any kind of break into the business. Just, getting some commissions here and there for stuff. So ironically, the biggest break that I probably had was just doing my own thing, but having enough of a following on Facebook to where people were like, yeah, we love this. Give us more of it.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't know. I get, is it a break? I don't know. It's hard to say, but I definitely would say like my biggest achievements prior to this book would have been those two things.
Well, I figure whatever gets your foot in the door is the key thing. And no, and like I said before, I mean, like I said, I discovered your work just seeing stuff show up on Facebook all the time, and
Yeah.
got to hear those blacklight posters you did, the classic Marvels were amazing, and like I said, I love the Spider-Man, Batman '66 homage that you did.
Oh, oh God, that was um yeah, that was a lot of fun. The black lights. Um so not to burst anyone's bubble because I really enjoyed doing them. But the black lights are literally just like how Marvel did. You remember Marvel's black lights were just like, we'll take panels
Yeah,
and we'll just make them black light. That's literally what I did. I just took art that I already had and I just
yeah.
changed the colors. But they looked really, really good. I'm like, damn,
Well,
like it
the
it
artwork
does
was good
work.
though. The artwork was
Thank you.
was great. I mean, that's what makes them fun, man. That's what makes it good.
It was a lot of fun because it was taking something and then absolutely reinventing itself in just by putting in that different kind of context. And the Life magazine one, that was one that was that one was just like this really, really fun idea that I had one day. I was I don't I'm trying to remember exactly what came about it, but I draw for fun, which makes the comic actually, a really nice thing to actually do work on. But the best thing that I enjoy about doing what I do is the inspiration of the ideas. I think anyone having, that flashy idea like, ooh, this seems like a really cool idea. Let's do this. What can we do with that? And what will be those little aspects that, you can add to it because you're inspired, because you got the juices flowing, right? That's the thing that I enjoy most about doing these things, doing covers, the mock covers and stuff like that, because it's building upon the inspiration, the inspired moment. And that's why, like, I know for a fact, like, I don't get burnt out on doing the stuff.
I think, well, again, we were talking about challenges,
Mm.
challenges that artists have. I think the other thing is too, also, are you drawing something that you love to draw as opposed to something you have to draw? And it sounds like what you're doing is you're drawing stuff that you love, and that's, I know, like I said, I'm a fan. I know other people that are fans too because we just love that style that looks like it's like discovering an artist from Marvel that you never knew existed until you saw this work. It's like you go back and you read a book that an artist did that maybe you didn't follow back in the 80s or the 90s, and it's like, oh my god, why didn't I follow this guy because he was so good? And I missed out. But I get to discover, you get the joy of discovering it now for the first time. And like I said, I mean, I'm a huge fan of that style, the 80s, 90s Marvel and DC. Um, the book that I'm writing right now with my buddy Scott Sackett, Black Cricket, we said we wanted to set
Ah,
out,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
we wanted to make it look like if Marvel had done a manga back in the 1980s.
Oh, okay.
And his style is very influenced by John Byrne, and you
Okay.
see some Byrne in his stuff, you see some Perez, but again, it's just one of those things where we're making a comic book that we will want to read as fans ourselves. And I think as long as you're doing that, you're having some fun with it. That's the key thing. So, and that's certainly, it seems like that's certainly what you're doing. So
Oh, my
that's great.
editor, my editor Judah Rad, actually, the reason why because I mean, I cannot reiterate how much I never wanted to do a comic book
Yeah.
for so long. I mean, lots of, interviews here and there, it's like, would you ever like make a character? Nope. You ever want to do a comic? Nope. Why not? Too much work. And it's very true.
Yeah.
However, um, uh, I did some work for this other podcast at the time called I Freaking Love Comics, and I got to know the guys, and they became, friends of mine over the internet. And one of those guys is this guy named Judah Rad. And Judah and I started like really, really like, you know, catching up and talking like very much on the regular. And one day he's just like, I'm gonna do a comic, man. I'm writing a comic. It's gonna be this science fiction James Bond. And I'm like, you're nuts, dude. Like doing a comic, that's crazy. It's so much work. He's like, I'm doing it though. And he did it. And he did it. And he made even an issue too. And because he did it, he made me think, okay, maybe this can be done.
Hmm.
But also, if I'm going to do this, I'm getting that guy on board with me.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what happened was like, when I came up with the idea and I contacted him like, dude, I'm doing a comic. And he's like, are you kidding? Because he's like, come on, man, like do some pages for me or something. Because I was doing pinups and, if he needed to have like an extra cover or like, things in there, like, he would ask me and he's like, I'll pay. And I was like, sure, give me like, give me $100 or something. I don't fucking care. Like, I'll do anything you need because you're my buddy.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, and and uh and so when I when I was like, we're gonna do this, he had the know about getting it realized, getting it made, getting it produced, knowing how to talk to these people, getting all the merch done, putting up the Kickstarter. Because those are the other things that end up being a part of it. Because if, you either got to do a Patreon, you got to do a Kickstarter to bring it to reality. Otherwise, you're getting it out to your audience and all those necessary things, as you know. Um, but he told me he's just like, the thing about this comic is like this is the story that I want to read. And it's important that you want to read the thing that you're doing because that's where the heart's going to be, that's where the inspiration's going to be, that's where all the ideas are going to come more fluidly, and they're going to have more to them because they're your ideas. When I'm doing commission work, and one of the reasons why I did the Hunter was like, you know what, I don't think I want to do commission work for a while. Like I'd walked away from a job that I had over here doing a commission job. And it was kind of freeing to say, like, what, I can say no, and that's okay. But, you know, the nice thing is, like, I want to do my character versus, bring these other characters that I don't have that connection with to life. The creators, they're babies, and I'm gonna do the best that I can to make a kick-ass piece for them, because that's the job. That's what you do for the job, you know. But I have like zero connection to so many of these characters that these people love, you know. And then when it's your own character and you know all the stuff about it, you're
Yeah.
like, you know what? I can imagine me hiring someone else to like do the work here, and they'd probably feel the exact same way about my fucking character, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
No one loves your character like you love your own character, and that's the great part about it.
Well, it's like your kid. It's like you could be a
Yeah,
teacher or a caregiver for someone else, but you're not going to love that child like you love your own child. That's your
true,
flesh and blood. And
true.
like I
And
said with my
how's the
character,
comic going, by the way?
it's going pretty good actually. Yeet Presents is running chapter one and number issue number 70, and chapter two is going to be in issue number 71. And my thing is, it went out this week, and of course, it goes out the same weekend. We got this huge snowstorm, so we got mail probably delayed for a while. But it's going well.
Hmm.
My like Scott's working on chapter 7 right now. I'm working on chapter 8, the script. Um, I have a buddy of mine, Kevin Scott Halter, who is doing the lettering. We have Jeff Austin doing the inking. Our game plan is to do 12 chapters and then do a collection. And I've got ideas to take us up to like five volumes. I've got the whole thing planned out in advance, and right now I'm just kind of figuring out new ways to do foreshadowing for future stories.
Yeah, yeah,
And
I get you. I get you.
plus,
How many
Scott,
pages?
each chapter is 12 pages right now.
Okay.
Scott keeps
Concise.
I know. Well, Scott keeps complaining that, are there any other supervillains in this? Well, plus two, I told him it's gonna be a slow boil
Okay.
getting up to the first real encounter with one of the first real supervillains.
Okay.
And he's like, well, you got some action here, you got some action there, but I'm not really seeing a lot of superhero fighting. And I'm like, wait for it. I gave him the script that had the first major mass destruction. And he came back and said, okay, I see what you mean now. It's bowled over.
When you said manga, are you going with manga pacing? Because manga
um,
pacing builds much more than, anything from the 1980s in comic books. Very, very compressed, as you know.
yeah.
Manga, takes a while to get there, but it'll give you like action along the way. Is it kind of in that respect?
It is. I told Scott that I'm working on the outlines now for each storyline, for each
Uh-huh.
story arc, but I've already told him I already know how the last panel is going to look. I already know how I want it to end. And well, plus two, I like the idea of having the hero's journey. I like the idea of having this character. And in the first chapter, you see he's still feeling the technology that he's using. It's not flawless. He's making mistakes. He's going to be making some major screw ups.
Sure.
And also, there's a lot of social awkwardness because I told him, I told Scott one of the things we wanted to have with the character is that the character lost his hearing when he was 11 years old
Whoa. Okay.
because of an accident caused by his father, caused
Right.
by a sonic cannon that his father created that was codenamed the Black Cricket.
Right.
And what happened was is that his father basically spent the next 10 years of his life sacrificing his company, sacrificing research to get his son's hearing back. The last major achievement he made was coming with a device that basically repaired his eardrum so he could hear again. And part of the story idea is that he discovers that his father's working on all these different devices that were meant to be used by the police, firefighters, the military, to keep them safe. And his first thought is, if Dad hadn't been focusing on me, how many lives could he have saved with these inventions?
Okay. Okay. There you
So,
go. There you go.
so his thing right
Personal
now
sense
is,
of redemption. Gotcha.
so he's basically going out there field testing the stuff and ends up finding out there's a lot of corruption in the world. So
Right.
always going to be going at. But at the same time, too, having grown up deaf, he was very isolated. So he doesn't pick on things like when women are flirting with him. He doesn't pick on stuff like that. He's a little
Ah.
slow on the uptake and such. So
Um. So if it's manga, then you're not doing 80s American comics, third person captions or thought bubbles and things like that. Or you could probably do thought bubbles, but
oh yeah, we're doing thought bubbles and such. Yeah,
okay. But you're
I
not
was
doing
like,
captions.
we do have some captions.
Okay.
It's mainly stuff like dates, locations, that kind of thing.
Right, right. But you know what I'm saying? Like that literary additive caption
Right,
that's
right,
going
right.
on there.
Yeah.
Um, I was just I saw something just like today about like what those added to panels and storytelling that you don't have as much, or no, you don't have it all now. You don't have thought bubbles now. You don't have third person caption now. I mean, third person caption was on its way out by like 88 anyways, but um it's just writing that now, you have to think so spatially with how you write things
Mhm.
because you actually sometimes need to fill a box. You can't just write whatever you like. You actually need to fill the box so it fills the space in the panel appropriately. And then of course you think about like, right, put up here and split it down here, or when someone's talking, does it like, one bubble for everything, or do I break it up into two? Because how that fits in with the composition of like a panel and stuff. And it's been really, really fun because when you figure those things out, like it adds so much more to the panel, the way that, that the letters lay out in there and whatnot. Because I have to do all that myself. I don't have anyone else doing it. It's all me.
Oh, yeah. Well, I get to have the fun of being an editor on this stuff too. So I get the artwork in. I'm like, I make suggestions for like we have to change panels around maybe sometimes and captions and where we're putting word bubbles and stuff like that. So it plus I get to reread my own stuff over and over again, which is not for some people I can imagine it's like, oh my god, I get to read my own stuff over and over again. It's just fantastic, it's amazing, and I'm like, I got to read this thing for the 10th time now to make sure there aren't any spelling errors or anything like that.
Well, I mean, yeah, Judah's just like squarely has an E in it, or there's a comma after that. I mean, he's very nuts and bolts about those specific things. Um, but oh man, I feel so lucky to just be able to edit it all myself
Yeah.
because it's so faster. I cannot imagine like they give it to you, you have to go over it, they put it back. If it's not like 100%, like it's still like the back and forth, you know, like that's got to be like frustrating at times, I would think.
Well, thankfully, well, like I said, Scott and I, when we talk, thankfully we get an opportunity to. We'll talk 10 minutes about Black Cricket, then we end up talking 20 minutes about Swinguli, or we'll end up talking like comics from the
Right.
'80s for another 30 minutes, and we have some. That's one of the things I love about working on this team is that I've got some really good guys working with me that
Right.
I can say they're not only my partners, but they're my friends and brothers.
Yeah.
So
I, they're all invested too,
they
you
are,
know.
thankfully. I consider myself a very lucky man when it comes to this. So, but we're talking about my book. We want to talk about your book. We want to talk about The Hunter. So tell us a little bit about this. For what's the pitch for people out there going, what's this book that Dakota's done, and why should I buy it?
I would probably say like the biggest draw to buy this book is what it provides in terms of the experience. Um, the character itself, God, I'm such a terrible salesman. You could say that a lot of these things are all essentially kind of derivative. I think that's one of the reasons why I never really wanted to like design a character or anything, is because it's like it's all kind of been done. So it all ends up sounding derivative on paper, but when you if you invest in it and you give it the excitement and the storytelling, it doesn't really matter. That's something that I actually learned from this experience. But I'll do this. One second. What The Hunter is a cover to cover, authentic, early 80s Bronze Age type of experience. So on newsprint.
Nice.
And what we did was what I did was I took existing 1980s ads and I just changed them around and
I was going
made
to ask
every
about that
company.
because I thought that was really cool. I like that.
So like you know like how Acme was like the brand for everything?
Hmm.
You know, that's the joke.
Yeah.
So Trouble is the name of the comic label, and so Trouble is the name of every single company, every single ad that we have in this book. Trouble Electronics Procrast Division.
Nice.
Um, cream filled troubles. So, as far as the story goes, um, the easiest way to say it is to say 90s Ghost Rider mixed with Firestorm, mixed with a little bit of Moon Knight. And what that means is you have a character who is out there, you know, punching it up with monsters. So you have your supernatural, your paranormal, and it's very going to be based in existing lore on some of the lesser known types of monsters out there. So not your Wolfman, but a Rougarou, which for those of us down like Louisiana Bayou area, they're much more familiar with that kind of swamp wolf creature. Um,
I know it's my cryptids.
that's right. That's right. So we're gonna have cryptids from America, all over America, but also cryptids from like the Philippines, things like that. The Ghost Rider Firestorm element is the fact that you have a regular Joe who becomes an avatar for a god, a lower level god, but a god nonetheless, Hearn, the god of the hunt, from British folklore. And so his ethereal form and the main guy, Stephen Conrad, their forms converge to make the hunter. Um, Stephen finds himself in true TV pilot fashion. He finds an amulet out of an old oaken chest that
Uh-huh.
he bought in a sale for no understandable reason, but was drawn to do so.
Yes.
And upon holding that magical bronze amulet, it glowed, and out comes Hearn to
Cool.
inform him that he has been given a sacred quest by the pantheon of the gods to stop, hunt, and destroy monsters that plague the corporeal realm. And
Nice.
so when their forms combined, they take on the form of the hunter. And this is um, Stephen Conrad can communicate directly to Herm through the astral plane, much like the astral plane that we had like in X-Men and Marvel Comics, which was white. You know, you go and characters would talk to each other there. Um, The Firestorm element is the fact that unlike the 1990s Ghost Rider, which when Dan Ketch returned to the Ghost Rider is very much this blunt instrument. Very little talking, very little time for BS, just, you know, take people out. And that's very much what Hearn is. Hearn's like, all business, just like I'm gonna take out these monsters and I'm gonna, mess them up. But now in the Firestorm connection, we also have the consciousness of Stephen Conrad in there as well,
Yeah.
much like the professor and was it Ron Raymond? Ronald, yeah.
Ronnie, yeah.
So what that allows you to do is you allows you to have the sort of the buddy cop mentality going on.
Yeah.
So you have these really functionally efficient opportunities for exposition
Uh-huh.
because Stephen Conrad has questions and Hearn has answers, or in, let's say, human contexts, Hearn has questions and Stephen Conrad has answers because Hearn's not a human and he's wondering, what are these superheroes that these mortals keep referring to? What are they? And that allows Stephen Conrad to discuss the fact that other superheroes do exist in this universe, though not many. I think there's like two. Um, which I had created initially so that I could do hostess ads. But then
Yeah.
I was like, oh, let's put them in the book. Fuck it. So
We need to
the
have
main, I'm sorry.
we need to have Hearn doing one of the ads like, what is this sponge cake cream filled thing that looks so delicious? I don't want to eat too
No,
many
no,
of
no.
them.
I mean, it would be like the parody ad of like if you had Wolverine do like a cupcake ad and who
Yeah.
would like, like just kill people and be like, now I'm hungry. Mm. Like it obviously it wouldn't make a lot of sense. And that's kind of the point is that you have these sort of bona fide hero types, you know, and which he'll meet and in regular comic book fashion, they're gonna fight because it's always gonna start off on bad terms. And
Oh yeah.
that's the wonderful thing about comics at that time was that you still gotta have it. It's just, it has to end in a stalemate because you don't want to define powers and abilities between characters and you want them to work things out in the end.
Right.
Um, ultimately, um, we have issue one out, obviously, where he's fighting the Rougarou. Issue two will be the second part of this particular story arc. Most of the story arcs are going to be about 2 issues.
Okay.
So here's the monster. You'll have the first issue will be, the first conflict. And then second issue will be following that up to a resolution
Right.
in whatever ways that we can make that, unique and interesting to each monster. Also, with other superheroes coming in certain cases. I do plan to have a single issue, one or two single issues, one of which is going to be the Point Pleasant Mothman will be a single issue. It's because
Nice.
I love I'm a big fan of Mothman. And I
Yeah.
like the idea of having just like that single one shot experience. Um and overall it'll probably go for about 15 issues because there is going to be an underlying story arc that's going to get brought to the table probably around issue after about issue 10. It's going to kind of get laid out. It'll get hinted to in little bits here and there. And then it's going to get laid out. And then you're going to have about 5 issues to really work it out. And there's going to be a resolution and the potential for opening up a door to another, to other possibilities, but kind of closing the door on this major chapter. Plus, however long these things take to get done, you know, how old I'll be at that point, whether I want to, go further with it, whether someone else would like to pick up the torch, who the hell knows. But the big point of it was that when I decided to put, I thought of the character and then I thought, I don't think I want this character to be in today's world
Right.
because I thought about I thought about the way media works. I thought about the way social media works. I thought about everyone having a cell phone. And I didn't want those and the irony of meme culture.
Yeah.
I didn't want those things to be there because I wanted it to be kind of still serious, but not grim dark, but PG. But how do you do that without getting into camp and self-referential irony? And I didn't want that. And I was like, well, what if I make it in, let's say, the early 80s?
Mhm.
I've been watching a bunch of stuff in the early 80s at that time. That was kind of on the forefront. And then I thought of like, Roger Stern, Captain America, Moon Knight. And I was like, well, those are books that have the right tone. And then I'm like, well, if I'm going to do that, because I was already doing everything in a vintage style anyways, what if I make the book on newsprint?
Yep.
And for a long time, I didn't think that was ever going to be a possibility. Not that I was thinking about making a book, but I went home in 2024. I went back over the summer and I went to my LCS and I found a DC facsimile of was it Batman 181, the first issue of Poison Ivy.
Yes. Yeah.
And the DC facsimiles have their stuff on newsprint. It's kind of a little bit thicker of a stock, but
Yeah.
it was great. It was made out of this company out in French Canada. And I was like, and of course it's a facsimile, so all the ads are there, and I'm like, this
Mhm.
is what we need to do.
Yep.
This is it. Let's have this book be the experience of reading comics, as it was. You know, as comics being this this bold opportunity for really, really potentially fraudulent advertising in so many ways. But there's so much charm. We were talking about Saturday mornings, and I was just I realized that these kind of comics sort of represented Saturday mornings in a way for me because I think for one thing, I think I went to comic shops on the weekends,
Mhm.
because you weren't going during the weekdays, you had school. And just what all these things sort of represented. I never really appreciated them as much when I was a kid, but when I go back and I read, I think, all these books now, or the old magazines, even like old Dark Horse stuff, I how low key everything was,
Yeah.
you know, and everything was kind of small time and charming. And I really, really think that there's an opportunity to do something that has, that takes itself seriously, but doesn't need to cross a threshold into, anything gratuitous.
Right.
And that's what reminded me of that's what helped solidified my idea of like I know what I want to do
Mhm.
in its totality.
Yeah.
And then, we ran the Kickstarter and we mostly got all of our interest through Facebook, which is ridiculous. You
Mhm.
know, everyone's like, "Where's your TikTok? Where's your Twitter? Where's your Instagram?" And we ran stuff on Instagram. I'm not going to go on to TikTok, and I'm really have never wanted to be involved with Twitter,
Right.
so
Yeah.
I
It's
never have. But luckily, I'd made enough of a an impression on Facebook, to the point where we made a significant amount of money, much more than I had believed I would. And now I'm already, I'm almost done with all the layouts for issue 2, and then we'll go back and do pencils probably the beginning of next week, February will be pencils, and looking to do the Kickstarter in spring for this one. There's some things that we are going to be improving upon. The page quality is a little dark.
Mhm.
That's partially my fault. It's also partially with the company that we went with. So we're looking into going with the different printer that this guy Micro T's, who did a comic called Last of Braxton,
Yeah.
his book, which I'm just gonna signal boost right now, real quick. Um, his book really got the page colors well, and he's the same as me. Um, did it all himself, put in his ads, and he was going much more for that 70s, very, like mid late 70s kind of fantasy stuff that was sci-fi fantasy stuff that was going on. And it's just, you know, when I got his book, I was like, okay, you you're the final step. And I think by the time we get that, and we'll I think we're gonna reprint issue number one too, just because I want to see it in this production value. Um, that's it. And so the goal is, if I'm really, really, really good, I could do potentially 2 issues a year.
Okay.
We'll see. But yeah, that's it in a nutshell. Artwork, very, very Burn influence with a bit of Zek in there. If you enjoyed Craven's Last Hunt, you're gonna see some sewer fighting.
Hmm.
Um, and things like that. But that's for the most part, that's the book in its entirety, just really trying to nail all those kind of boxes.
Excellent. Well, I was going to say, for folks who want to pick up a copy of The Hunter, how can they do that?
So the we printed all the ones that we printed out. We got all those to the backers, right? So now we're left with the excess. And the excess involves the main cover, which I actually don't have on me at the moment. Is there like a chat or something I can show you guys like a picture?
Well, I was going to say we'll have it on YouTube, so anybody, if you show it here, anybody can see it. Um, if we do the radio version, though, we won't be able to have a graphic now, unfortunately.
All right. Uh,
Now we could include a graphic when we post the interview.
okay.
I can ask them to post it if you want to do that.
Okay.
When we announce
What I'm gonna
episode.
do is I'm gonna throw you some images in the chat real quick
Okay.
of these different covers. So there's three covers, all done by me. The first one is uh the main cover, which is pretty much your standard Marvel the hero and villain kind of duking it out. Lots of like, extra like, text boxes like first issue and those kind of things. So that's in the chat now. The
Okay.
second one is an homage variant to Wolverine #1. And the image on this homage variant is really the image that we're using for a lot of the promotion of the Hunter, just because it's got a really great pose there. And then the third one is the wraparound, which I have on me at the moment. It's this, and that is uh very much my Mike Zeck um sort of homage of sorts to the fights in the sewers between Spider-Man and Vermin in Kraven's Last Hunt. So those three issues, plus we're gonna add in trading cards and like bookmarks to every purchase. But those are getting sent over into California, where I have my hub for Etsy, and those
Yep.
will be on my Etsy, uh, which I will include a link right now. But that is etsy.com/shop/ Drums of the Serpent. Drums of the Serpent is my art name from back when I was doing Japanese stuff. And we'll have those available for direct purchase. I am trying to figure out if there's a way for me to provide the digital book through Etsy purchases. Right now, Etsy seems like it's only doing like a few images because it can only allow like a certain number of megabytes. But I might try and find a way for if you buy a digital copy because it's a lot, obviously it's less expensive. That I can provide you with a link that will allow you to download the digital version.
Okay, cool. Well, I was going to say, I know
Yeah.
there's a few platforms you could use for where people can buy digital copies.
Okay.
Like Digital Drive-Through is one because I remember the first black cricket story we ever did was a crossover with another company, and they were able to post. It was all digital, so is the great thing about it is you can set your own price for it. You can have it like if you want to sell a book for $15, you can. If you want to sell it for 25 cents, you can. If you want to make it
Yeah.
available for free, you can do it. So you can maybe
Right.
do like a private link or something like that to it. So the good
Yeah,
thing
yeah.
is they watermark it, so you can't copy and post it elsewhere without the watermark showing up on it.
Okay. All right. It's fair.
Yeah.
What I mean, do it whatever you can. I mean, uh piracy is it's a thing. I'm up and down about it because I'm there are times I'm like I want to give you my money, but you're not allowing me the opportunity to. So how am I going to get to it? Damn it. So
Exactly.
the trick here though, yeah, like you said, I think also there are people who I know who just honestly, it's like this is just easier. Um, but the nice thing and the thing that we get so much with the response is like it feels good in my hands.
Yes.
And that's what, like I said, it's like, why should people buy the book? And I'm like, honestly, to have it in your hands, it feels good. It feels right. It feels like something that, you know, what comics kind of meant in a way. And I'm definitely in no way trying to bag on modern comics. I should probably say superhero comics more specifically when it's like, comics in our hands at the time, you know. Um, but that paper stock, that disposability
Hmm.
that they had, it's like, people was like, it feels like I got off a spinner rack
Yeah.
at a drugstore, you know, as opposed to, a proper comic shop, which is also great too. But just the fact that it was just, we had comics, we got comics different ways back then, as opposed to only one way where you had to order them or something like that, and it was nice to have that as an option at the time. So this is part of bringing that experience back.
Well, like you said, it's tied to the joy that you had when you were a kid reading these books, and
Mm.
the there's a certain quality about Bronze Age comic books that you just cannot get modern age, and no matter how much you try, you can't bring that magic back of the Smith and Johnson ads for novelty toys and such, or the Hostess ads, or even house ads,
Oh
which
yeah, all
back
of
in the
it.
day were just every comic book that looked exciting in the back issue of Superman or the Flash. It's like I could never find it on the newsstand. It would I'd always miss it. But I knew it was out there, and I knew I was going to find it one of these days. But well, that's the other
Yeah,
thing too. It's like at the draw.
they had that who's who at the end of every who's who had like a list of all of these like different issues, like that the characters were currently in and stuff. And it's true, like I can almost never find those. And
Well,
some
again,
of
it's
them
like
looked really, really exciting.
it's like at the draw too. It's like I know the new issue of Brave and the Bold's out this week. I know it's out there, but I can't find it on the spinner rack in my local store. But hey, there's a copy of the Avengers that looks pretty good. I can go ahead and spend my money on that this week. It's like I don't know. It isn't. If you're a completist, it'll drive you nuts and drive you crazy. But if you're willing to take a few chances on something different when you can't find your regular, it was a magical time.
I found like there's one of my favorite other one-shot Daredevils was a comic I found at the grocery store, you know, and it was a very, very early Ron Lim before he was on Silver Surfer.
Hmm.
And I mean, when you're on your own book and you've got your deadline, you're doing all this kind of stuff, it's just like but in this particular case, like Ron Lim had much more detailed work going in on this single issue because I don't think he had anything else going on as much at the time. It's a great issue. It's the issue where he meets the Bengal and just wonderful panel work. And yeah, it's like it's the happenstance of the moment. In the in on the flip side of that, when I was really collecting comics, I was actually collecting comics in the sense that I was probably spending more money on back issues. I had two subscriptions. I had subscription to Amazing Spider-Man, which started at Amazing Spider-Man 300, if you can believe that. And then the X-Men, which started at the Fall of the Mutants. So I had two incredibly wonderful series going on at that time, to satisfy my modern enjoyment, with like modern art. But then I was looking for back issues of like everything John Byrne. So all the Fantastic Four and the Incredible Hulk, the classic X-Men, all those great things. And looking through and finding those was also because I never, it was in a bag
Mhm.
and I never opened them. And I wish I had because sometimes John Byrne was on the cover, but he wasn't the interior art. So I wasted
Yeah.
some money sometimes. Well, I mean, I didn't waste, but it wasn't, I was let down because I wanted the art to match the cover, the
Right.
bait and switch. But it was that like, you know, okay, is this the issue of Incredible Hulk that has the fight with Doc Samson and Hercules and the Avengers? Is this that one? Is this the one that has it? Or is it a different one? Because I was looking for that because I saw that panel in, the official handbook of the Marvel Universe, and you went looking for it just because like that issue looks like it's got great art. I'm gonna go out and find him.
Right.
And just the search or wanting to continue the story. So good. So good.
Of course, now I know because, like I said, I remember every week going to the grocery store buying. My thing was you'd have one store that only had DC and Marvel. You had another store that had Archie's, it had Go Key, more indie stuff, and it
Yeah.
was a thrill of the hunt because it's like going to the grocery store, finding one set of comic books, going to Little Journal, which was our version of 7-Eleven, getting comics you can't find at the grocery store, and then we had like a place called News and Novels where I eventually settled at that got just about every major comic book that came out from DC, Marvel, and the Harvey and such,
Okay.
Archie. But they also had like Starlog and Cinema Fantastique and all my monster magazines, so I was able to get those two in one stop, and that was kind of nice. But modern times, it is kind of nice to be able to know where you can find an issue exactly. So there is no hunting, there is no searching. It's like I know what I want. Like I want Hunter #1. I know how I'm going to get it, and that's a great thing. That's good for readers. That's good for fans. So
Yeah. I mean, and the fact that you have so many, you have three shops open up in your hometown, that is so good. I
yeah,
mean, uh granted, like, the thing about it is like people are like comics are dying. I'm like, no, comics aren't dying. Superhero comics are in danger, yes. But comics, the medium, no. No, you got more going on than you've ever had before. And thanks to, crowdfunding and things like that, you have literally more people, creating more stories than you'll ever see. And that's good. That's really good because that means that, you have the variety. And that was the other thing that I was talking to on a streamcast once was just like, you know, the way that people are telling stories now, like why don't they tell stories like this, before, or which do you prefer or whatever? And the idea is it's like, no, 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 you missed the point. There shouldn't be a standard. There should be all of it, you
right.
know? What we loved about graphic novels was that it told decompressed versions of these stories that allowed things to breathe. Unfortunately, the graphic novels become the modern standard. And so you don't have the compressed stories, which absolutely should have their place because it's they're it's a different method to tell a certain kind of story. And that's the thing that I enjoy. I enjoy to have all of those options versus, something being just the norm or the standard, the boilerplate, as it were.
Well,
So
again, it's the challenge. It's if you give me 200 pages to tell a story in, I could probably do a pretty good job. But if you say I've only got 6 pages to tell a story, that becomes the challenge. That's when you start getting down to the meat of the matter. That's when you start getting stuff down to the bone. It's we talked about comic books being like children. It's like what happens when you've got to chop an arm off one of your kids because you can't do 7 pages, you can only do 6 pages, or
yeah,
maybe if you talk to the editor, he'll let you do 8 pages. But it's that when you it's that setting yourself that time limit. It's again when you've got all this space to work with, it's easy to kind of get a little bloated. It's easy to get too much stuff in there
padded,
sometimes. But,
padded.
but when you strip it down to the bare necessities, that's when you get really good storytelling. I honestly think some of my best stories have been told in just a matter of a few pages, whereas opposed to doing something where you're given like carte blanche and just go nuts. It's easy to get
Yeah.
off track sometimes. It's easier to stay focused, I think, when you just do the smaller page counts.
I think you and I were talking about, like, television used to be this way too, where it's just like you had an episode, you had to get it out, you had to explain it, you had to bring in the conflict, you had to have some level of resolution,
Mhm.
hopefully, with some new information towards the end that adds complexity to what's going on, right? Because, it keeps people interested for whatever level of that. And, you know, there are times when it doesn't need to be that complex, but you don't need to think that much about it. It just needs to, like, be, fun from like start to finish. And I'm invested, for this period of time. And I don't need to be invested much more than that because that's as much as I want to invest. And I think things having that as the option is great versus it's on another cliffhanger. It's on another cliffhanger. And me, because I spend more time drawing than I do in taking media. I don't want things that demand that of me, regardless of how good they are, because it's never a question of the quality. For me, it's honestly a question of my own personal level of investment.
Right.
So, when we were talking, like, Riptide, I found episodes of Riptide. Is it a good show? Define good, I don't know. But, I liked the start and to the finish. Star Trek The Next Generation, I think, is very legitimately good. And they're able to write those episodes, from start to finish, just like, early X-Files and things like that. But Andor's also incredibly, incredibly good. And it fills 12 episodes very well, you know? So is what's your intent? But if everything has to be 8 episodes,
Yeah.
so many things are not 8 episodes worth of story. They're
Exactly.
just not, and it shows.
Yeah.
Because there's like you watch one episode and you're like, I'll be watched because I always watch with friends. When I watch new stuff, I watch it with friends. And I'm like, is it me or did nothing happen? We talked a lot and there was some monologues because that's one of the ways that you pad stuff out is through monologues. But I'm like, is it me or did nothing actually happen in this episode? Because I don't think we've gone from any further from A to towards B.
Yeah.
And that bugs me, you know, because it's not that my time is valuable, but it's just like it's crass. It's like you just think that I'm just going to keep watching. Well, we'll see about that, mister.
Yeah.
We'll see what the next episode has to do. And then you get to the end, you're like, all right, I'm actually not going to go to season 2. I'm sorry. Oh, but it's
Yeah.
already been greenlit. I don't care. I
let
don't
someone else,
care.
let someone else watch it. I'm passing on it.
And and it amazes me how much media people are able to consume,
Yeah,
but then I realize that it's just like, oh, it's because I don't, because I'm drawing. Or if I'm watching something, it's like, oh, let's watch this, like, bad movie that we found, or this good movie, and I'll watch with some buddies or something like that. Content's very, very different for me, especially because I have to go through, in some cases, I've got to like download things,
right.
or my time is my schedule as I get home at night and things like that. And I've got other things that I want to focus on. Whereas people are like, have you checked out A, B, C, D, E, F, G show?
Yeah,
And I'm like, don't you work? Don't you have time? And then you realize it's like, oh, there's 7 days in a week or something like that. And people watch like multiple things, you
right,
know?
right. Well, that's that. Well, again, when you're creating your own stuff, it's a little bit harder because you've got to actually sit down and you don't have a lot of time to be distracted. And I know buddies of mine that are artists. They're able to watch TV or listen to shows while they're drawing, and I've got to have complete silence when I'm writing because I'm running dialogue in my head or I'm
Yeah.
actually running. It's a weird. I've told people before if they ever saw me writing, they'd probably think I was nuts because I'll actually start talking as the characters. I'll actually start talking out dialogue.
Oh, I do that.
Yeah,
I pace. Oh,
yeah,
absolutely. And I have to turn off like if I'm drawing, I can have things like, uh 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 YouTube like documentary content or something like that. I'll put that on, somewhere where it's, things I've heard before.
hmm
But if I'm writing, yeah, no, absolutely not. It has to be silence. But like that's how I think of all the panels and then the dialogue, and yeah, and I might be like, because he punches him, he goes back,
yeah.
I'll just be pacing around. Absolutely. I completely identify with that, you know.
Weird thing
I
is,
wonder if other people
sometimes.
do too.
Well, the weird thing about it is there have been times I've done this where I run dialogue and I think I know where I want the dialogue to go and where I want a character to say, and then subconsciously I say something as that character. I'm like, did the character just write his own dialogue, or am I still writing this? And then it starts getting this whole thing about, should I be on meds? Should I not be on meds? And then I'm like, I figured the best thing to do is just move on to the next chapter and just
You're funny.
not worry too much about it. Just
You're
enjoy the
you're
madness.
you you've created a character and a character would respond a certain way
Yeah.
based on all the things that you have established that that character does,
Mhm.
which is why we have the term, it's a very in character thing, or it seemed very out of character. It's one of the reasons why headcanon drives me crazy, is because it's like, when people add action figures, it's like, yeah, I'm Spider-Man, but now I can also fly because you can do that. And you're between the ages of, let's say, 4 to 10,
Yeah.
that's, it's your own world and you can do that. When you have people who do that with established comic characters, someone was telling me it was like Nick Fury in the MCU would get behind Killmonger. And I'm like, why? Isn't this the same Nick Fury that like greenlit having a bunch of helicarriers like point guns and like, snipe people all over the world? He's not going to be in favor of like a rogue nation taking up arms. And this person's, thoughts are, well, he's not real. I can do whatever I want with him. I'm like, you have evidence of what this character does.
Right.
So in your case, you designed the way this character is going to think, and it makes sense. So, like I completely understand when you say like, oh, is the character writing itself? It's like, well, you're creating situations and the character is fleshed out enough in your mind to provide those actions very organically.
Exactly.
I, you know, the tricky things are, well, for me, this is the one thing, is the tricky things are like, does he say this much or does he say this much? Or do I use this bit of dialogue as a way to add just the slightest bit of exposition in there?
Hmm.
Because what I do, I mean, Bronze Age dialogue is all pretty much exposition based. It's all functional. You just
Yeah.
have to make it feel like it's not. So, so that's the thing that I run into as well is just like, oh, I should probably add this one little extra like throwaway line because that'll help explain a panel or something like that. That's where I run into. Do you have that going on with you as well?
I do. This is another thing that I get criticized about from my team is I'll get pages back with dialogue, lettering, and everything's laid out, and I'm like, now that I think about it, maybe the character wouldn't say that, or maybe we should change this. And I've actually sent pages back going, can you like change the lettering on this? Because I thought of something better that I want to write here instead. So honestly, I'm editing my stories up until the very last minute sometimes because
Agreed.
I'm just like it's just certain little things that just hit you, and there have been times I'm like, dang it, I had an opportunity to have a line in there with great foreshadowing and I missed it. But that's just the way it goes sometimes.
Oh no, no, no. I mean, like I said, like I feel very lucky to have the ability to edit at the last minute, oh wait, I want to change this because I have I can, for the most part, like letter. I learned enough from the guy who was supposed to be our letterer, and then he had to back out because he was just like, a buttload of commitments and stuff. That sounded weird. Um, and committed to butt loading. Um, so
And that's a job you
yeah,
can't half-ass. You know that. But loading is a job you cannot half-ass. You could get wiped out if you do.
you get wiped out. You don't want to get eliminated. You don't want to get dropped. Um,
The bad thing about butt loading as a job. No matter how well you do it, you're always going to be number two. I'm sorry. This is
oh God, that's good. That's good though. So and then like we were saying, like letterers, they understand, layouts and how like there'll be space here and it's good. You throw you throw a balloon up in there.
Mhm.
Then it works in terms of composition. And that's part of it is that like in my particular case, I'm like, there's a little bit of space here. What if I add one little extra bit of dialogue and then it
Mhm.
connects it so you've got like two word balloons there. And being able to do that like at any point in time that I please, that's a really, really that's something that initially, if someone was like, "Oh, you have to letter too," and I'm like, "Yeah, but think about what that allows you in
Yeah.
terms of creativity or troubleshooting, scenes and things like that, because there's no one else that you have to connect with, you know. It's all immediate, and that's one of the things that I learned for this issue is that I'm doing before it was like, oh, write a script. And I'm like, okay, I'll write a script. And then I would transfer it and do that. And this, I don't have a script at all. I'm literally just putting out the panels because I already have plot and I've got a general idea of what's going to be said in there. And then as I'm seeing it, I'm like, and we'll put a caption box there, we'll put a caption, and we'll put some,
Hmm.
he'll discuss this dialogue here, and we'll cut this dialogue and put this into here. And I get to manage it all immediately
Yeah.
or relatively immediately. And then everything's just really roughs. So now when the pages are going to be done, I only got three more to do. I'm going to pull out, or I'm going to just, not delete, but I'm going to print out those pages with the panels with all the dialogue
Hmm.
out onto A4, and I'm going to put them down. I'm going to put on a light board. I'm going to put a piece of paper on top of them. I'm going to draw the things into the boxes and whatever, scan them in, and then tweak them out there. And I think it's saved me a lot of labor in terms of I've gotten the story more locked down. as opposed to trying to do each page and then looking back at things because it allows the editing process to be much more in its totality without getting painted into a corner by doing the art, the final art.
Yeah.
So it's been uh well, I think in any case, I think you learn a lot of labor saving techniques as you go.
Oh yeah. Well, like I said, the more you do it, the more you find ways to take some shortcuts that don't knock the quality down, but just make the job flow a little bit easier. And that's always a good thing.
Right.
Yeah. Well, Dakota, I was going to say, I just saw the time. We've been going for about 2 hours now.
Sorry.
No, it's fine, man. It's fine. I've had a ball. But I was going to say, thank you again for joining us on this edition of Dollar Bin Bandits. We appreciate it very much. And like I said, as soon as Hunter comes out, let me know because I definitely want to get a copy for myself when it's on your Etsy. I want to get a copy because it does look fantastic. If you guys have not seen the artwork and you love Bronze Age comic books, I think this is going to be a book that's going to trip your trigger. I think you guys are going to love it. So
I can include a couple of pages in the chat too, so you guys get a quick look at it. Um, the it's set to arrive on the 27th.
mhm.
And my guy out in Cali, my dad, we're getting the shippers and stuff like that. So honestly, I'm hoping by the end of next week, I will have just you know put it out there, contact everyone because I've had a lot of people who are very interested in it. A lot of people were like, "Oh my God, I didn't know about the Kickstarter." And then hopefully getting people the book. If they're interested in the book, that means that many more people will be on board for issue number two.
Yes.
Um, like I said, issue number two is going to have a variant by Chuck Patton. It's going to be a lot of fun and a really great second half to this story, and really looking to kickstart this book. And we got a lot of stories. I've got them all figured out, and there's going to be a lot of fun stuff to look forward to. So more people who can enjoy it, the better.
I was going to say superhero and cryptids. You can't beat that. That's a great combination right there.
I'm having a good time. No one's made any jokes about the antlers, and I really, really find that amusing because that's literally the entire impetus of the whole freaking book. Was I was hungover, and I was like, "Has there ever been a superhero with antlers?" Wait, and but like I thought it would be really funny to make a superhero with antlers. And the reason that no one has ever done that is because drawing antlers suck. They really suck.
Well, I was going to say it is a feature you can hang your hat on. So
Dan Johnson, ladies and gentlemen, Dan Johnson.
remember to tip your waitress, and remember the life you save on your way home may be mine. So drive careful, folks.
Thank you for having me, man. It was good to talk to you.
It was a pleasure talking with you too. And I now notice I missed I didn't take the obvious one about saying he's like the horniest superhero in comic books. So
There's always issue two podcasts. We'll come back. We'll come back. Honestly, if you ever willing to have me back on for to promote issue number two, I think we should just like shift right into every bad pun we can think of. And just waste every human being's time. Just being like, are they going to talk about anything substantial? No.
oh, well, now you notice well for the folks who are still with us, we actually did talk about doing this as old-timey prospectors, and we didn't do that. So
We didn't do that. I would really, really, we probably should edit some of this down because we do,
or,
we do go in circles a few times.
I was gonna say though, when it comes, when we just a gold mine when we start doing the prospector voices, it's gonna be hitting the gold mine right there. I tell you, man, it says it's a gold mine in my pants. I'm sharing with the townspeople. So
Whoa, you want to tell you when you see that gold up in there, you get the spike and it gets all the rumbling and the tumbling. And I ain't just talking about the beans that you made for lunch.
I
Oh,
know.
pickles and gravy.
Cookie, gonna make ourselves some biscuits and some gravy. Yeah, it's gonna be some good stuff. It's gonna be some good eatings right there. When we hit that gold mine, then we're gonna go steak without biscuits and gravy. So
You,
Ladies
you,
and gentlemen, it is past midnight when I'm doing this, so I cannot be held accountable for anything I say at this point.
are
But
we
I will very,
live? Are we live? Are we live? Oh my God.
um,
Lord, I apologize.
I feel like it. I always do feel like I need to apologize before getting started. I always told the guys that if they ever got kicked off their platforms, I'm probably going to be the guy who gets them kicked off.
That's the spirit, Danny.
But
Yeah, buddy.
we're gonna have a hell of a time while we're here. So, but anyway, ladies and gentlemen, again, Dakota Alexander, thank you very much. Check his work out on Facebook. You will not be sorry. His artwork is amazing. It's fantastic. He knows how to take a joke too, which I appreciate very much. Anyway, this is Dan Johnson with Dollar Bin Bandits, and I am signing off at this time before I get myself in any bigger trouble. Good night, everybody.
All right.
I want to thank Dakota for joining us today. I highly encourage you all to pick up a copy of The Hunter #1 and be on the lookout for issue #2, which will be coming soon. Meanwhile, this is Bandit Dan saying adios as I ride off into the sunset. Have a great day, folks.